What's up? This is Dominique Beaumonte, and you are listening to Season with Salt, the podcast. For the most part, this podcast, I shouldn't say for the most part, this podcast is about uplifting people. And the name of this podcast, Season with Salt, is in reference to a scripture in the Bible that says our words should be seasoned with salt. And the reason why I've had this podcast since 2018, and the reason why I wanted to have this podcast, because I felt like to some people, there are topics that are off limits to Christians. So if it's not about like what's happening at the church, then Christians shouldn't be talking about it. And I wanted to have a podcast where I could talk about things, whether they be popular culture or things that are taboo, from a spiritual lens, but also from a lens of someone who has lived life, who loves God, and recognizes that not everybody goes to church. One of the influences for this podcast, or a person that influences podcasts, is an old colleague of mine who introduced me to the show Insecure. We were working for this organization, and every day we'd come in and talk about it, and she ended up giving me access to her, I think it was on HBO, her HBO account, and I really, really loved watching Insecure. And as a result of that, started listening to Amanda Seales' podcast, Small Doses. Loved Amanda Seales. I'm not establishing today that I do not love her any longer, but I do want to take a look at, just from a critical lens, or from my lens rather, I want to take a look at some of the things that she said, how she showed up at the interview with Club Shay Shay. I'm going to be honest. It's a struggle for me because I recognize, as a Black Christian man, that from my perspective, men are called to protect women, Black women in particular. I understand what Amanda is saying about feeling unprotected. I understand what she is saying about being misunderstood. I get that. Where I am challenged is this sort of narcissistic expectation that you deserve to be protected by everybody around you, even if you are not their friends or their person. Or I'm critical of the idea that people at work, people who supervise you, are called to protect you socially. I'm critical of the idea that everybody in your space has to protect you, because all of us, especially as Black people, we're doing everything in our power to survive. And to the best of our ability, we should be protecting each other. But I think that when the person takes on the disposition of a victim, and everybody who fails to protect them in the way that they want to be protected have somehow become like public enemy number one, I just have a challenge with that. And I wanted to talk about this, the interview on my podcast, because as I watched all 3 hours of the podcast, it was an incredible struggle for me to see a Black man as both an athlete, as an artist, as someone creating a platform for people to share their position, it was hard for me to see that interaction between he and Amanda Seales. I felt like, and to be honest, I seen the video that Amanda Seales made before she was even on the show, where she talked about how valuable the platform could potentially be for her brand. It could give her this opportunity to share things that perhaps people didn't know. I seen the back and forth with her and Essence and other entities, and I could understand where she was coming from, but I also struggle with this idea that we can be verbose and opinionated and forward thinking intellectuals without anybody having the right to challenge us. I'm not with that. I'm not with that. The louder you are, right, like the more susceptible you are to criticism. And I don't think that it's fair to villainize people who are only responding to what you put out there. And so I wanna talk about this. Honestly, I wish I had somebody else on the show today that I could like really kind of hammer some of these ideas out. If you want to come on the show and talk about this some more, I'm open to it. Again, I want to, before I go into the nitty gritty, I want to reiterate how difficult this is because I understand the importance of protection. Where I where I felt unhinged or sort of cleared, if you will, is when Amanda Seales began to talk about how the work that Issa Rae does essentially garners her a certain respect that calls for people around her to protect her. And she noted that even she, Amanda Seales, had been a part of the Protect Issa Rae piece. But she also noted that Issa Rae had not reciprocated that protection to her. Now, I started to break that down because it started to become personal. You might say, if we're industry collaborators and I'm on your show, then a party at night that's not necessarily connected to the show, but a party at night, still I need to be honored, respected, and protected as you as my supervisor or somebody who put me on. I just disagree with that. I would like, if I had a supervisor or superior that I also acquainted myself with in social spaces, I honestly can say that I would like for their advocacy. I would like for their support. I would like for their friendship. I would like for their covering. But outside of the work that we do together, that person is not obligated to protect or cover or do anything. Let me tell you something. She talked in depth about going to a party that Issa's uh, public relations associate was one of the planners for, and her not being able to get in and eventually getting in and being escorted. I think it's a completely inappropriate for a man to put his hands on a woman in any way, shape, or form. And I want to confirm that because I know people will be like, well, she was assaulted. I do not support that. The challenge that I have is being somewhere where you are potentially not welcomed, but like forcing yourself into that space and being disappointed when the people who have, listen, if I get to a door and somebody tells me that I'm specifically not on the list, or I'm on the do not enter list, I don't care who comes out to get me. I don't care who encourages me to stay. I'm out because I don't want to be in a place or space where I'm not fully welcome. Now, is it going to be difficult to be? It's difficult, right? Like to be somewhere where people just honor you, expect everybody loves you. I'm not saying that at all. But I think it's just problematic to make Issa responsible. I love the accountability that Issa makes by even calling Amanda to say, hey, just so that we're clear, the issue that you might have with my publicist is in no way connected to me. So let's just start foundationally. I know I jumped into some of the details, but perhaps Club Shay Shay is this great show. It's a sensational YouTube podcast that is interviewing really amazing people, some for which we have not heard from in a long form, right? They are, Shannon Sharpe is interviewing folks for hours just talking about things, and he is impeccable when it comes to his research. He has studied the person that is sitting across from him. He knows what he wants to say. He's prepared. It's like he's doing this with a great precision. I love it, right? He has Amanda Stills on the show. He's had other folks on the show, but it's Amanda Stills' turn. She's essentially made, uh, a couple of videos on Instagram and other places saying that this would be great for her career. It happens. God opens the door. Here are the things. If I'm thinking about the takeaways from this video, because maybe you don't have 3 hours, or maybe you don't even know who I'm talking about. Amanda Seales is an actress, a comedian, a podcaster, a singer. She was on the hit HBO show Insecure, written and produced by Issa Rae. She was formerly a member of the two-person duo Floetry after one of the original artists left the group. And she has a great podcast. She gets on the podcast on Shannon Sharpe's podcast, and she starts talking about essentially the things that have happened in her life. It feels like therapy. It feels just the way that she described it when she said she wanted to be on Shannon Sharpe's show. An opportunity to clear the air, an opportunity to clarify things that people may not know. Honestly, I didn't even know she was, I like Floetry and didn't know she was in Floetry at all. So there's some things that great opportunity to learn. She says that her teacher was racist and didn't. She had some racist teachers that held her back. She had a dorm roommate that held her back. When she was the substitute member of Floetry, Marsha Ambrosius held her back, didn't like her, was intimidated by her. She was expelled from college. Partially, it was their fault. She did some work with Nickelodeon. That didn't work out. It was her fault. She made this connection between some of the ways that people understand her, work with her, and autism. You might have seen some of this in the news because it's very controversial, because I think Shannon Sharpe wants to know from her, have you been clinically diagnosed with autism? Or are you making connections between some of your personality traits and autistic people? She's offended by that because, you know, she doesn't need to prove to Shannon Sharpe that she was clinically diagnosed with anything, right? So her argument is Why does somebody have to validate their illness to anybody? So there's the autism thing. That's a whole episode in itself. Hard to comment on. Then she got fired from Sirius while she was on the radio. The story is all over the place. Is it a boss of hers? Is it her? Whatever the case may be, there's very little accountability taken on her part. Then there is her getting kicked out of the Emmys party. We talked a little bit about that already. She made several references to the cast of Insecure not being her people. She, in some ways, honored Issa, but also mentioned that Issa failed to protect her and that she was no longer going to be protecting Issa, essentially. She talked about Issa's publicist having a vendetta against her and her having a conversation with Issa's publicist after she got kicked out of the Emmy party. She talked about Howard University rescinding their interview with her. She talked about her inability to get along with the folks on The Real. She talked about the various news entities like Essence Magazine that she was in conflict with. I think she even was able to negotiate getting an interview with the Essence Magazine uh, editor, but then on the day of the podcast recording, I guess the editor canceled. Essentially, she used Shannon Sharpe's platform. She essentially used Shannon Sharpe's platform to make the case that she was unprotected by others, misunderstood by everybody except her mom, and one of the issues among many that I struggle with is the perpetuation of negative stereotypes when it comes to Black women. There were times in the interview where it was like she wasn't courteous. She wasn't warm or welcoming. I think that they even had this back and forth about what it actually means to be combative. Now, this is Shannon Sharpe's show. This is a platform that he avails to her, that she agrees, and I think in her words, she says is a career-changing opportunity. Now, she reflects on this opportunity as something that could change her career, which means that she honors the platform that Shannon Sharpe has. At the same time, her disposition, her attitude, the way that she shows up on the show is completely different from the way that she shares. So essentially, she needs this platform to talk about how she's misunderstood. Any type of accountability or questioning or just trying to get clarity, you know, she becomes combative or she responds to the idea that he might be combative. Even, with regard to her race, her ethnicity, perhaps in Shannon Sharpe's research about her, he may have assumed that one of her parents was not African American. And rather than just saying, let me tell you what the deal is, there was a lot of like, see, everybody's against me. I do not doubt that because of the nature, the content, the platform that Amanda Seales has, that people are in love with her and she has no critics. She has critics. There are people, I'm sure she's in an industry where your opinion, your personality, your gifting, your talent, your craft, all that matters. I believe that there are certainly people in the industry that Amanda Seales likely has a wonderful, thriving relationship with. But after the interview, it's really, really difficult for me to believe that all these people are wrong and they have been mistreating her and misunderstanding her and throwing her to the side. And there's no accountability that she can take for herself, her attitude, or even just say, people are uncomfortable with me because the life that I have chosen sometimes positions me to be very opinionated about things that people think differently about. And I think that that's hard. Even, and I respect it. I have a undergraduate degree in ethnic studies, and it sounds like she had an undergraduate degree in Black studies or something similar to that. And she talked about how when she shows up to talk about issues, whether it be about race or critical race theory or all these different things that she talks about, that a part of the reason why she went and got a master's degree is because she wants to make sure that when she shows up in these discussions, she's not just showing up as Amanda with an opinion, but she's showing up with someone academically, intellectually versed to have a conversation and say things that people respect because of her academic pedigree. I get that. But that does not mean that everybody's going to agree with you. That doesn't mean that people are going to be like, you went to Columbia to get your master's degree, therefore, I'm completely wrong. Wherever I went doesn't matter. Let me just sit down quietly and listen to what it is that you have to say, and let's internalize your truth as the truth. That is unrealistic. And I thought that Shannon Sharpe at times did well promoting his viewpoints, trying to ensure that she didn't completely take over his platform. I thought he did well. I thought there were some times when he could have taken a step back. As a journalist, I thought there were times when he could have stopped her and steered the episode in the way that he thought they should go. I think this is different from the Cat Williams episode because Cat Williams was saying things that, from my perspective, whether you knew the people or not, were relative to who he was as a human, his perspective, his place, his viewpoint in the industry. It felt to me like Amanda was trying to defend herself against people, but some of the stuff we had no idea. But I don't know if she went for, like, I just feel like it reminds me of what Cat Williams said about his appearance on the show. He's like, I watched these other people lying on me on the show, and I had to come at the very least to clear the air. So now we got all these other people who Amanda Seales has thrown under the bus, most of which are other Black women. Now, come on, y'all. Most of which are other Black women who are now unprotected and have to choose peace or take the path of silence. But they too also have been exposed in a way that may or may not be in alignment with who they are, how they want to be projected in the media. So she's created for them what she says that they created for her. Now Issa is misunderstood. Now the ladies of Floetry are misunderstood. Now somebody at Essence got to clear the air. Now somebody at Sirius Radio got to clear the air. So it's like, what does Club Shay Shay become if the work of this show is just to have this cycle of people clearing the air about what the last guest said about them? I just feel like, so for that reason, I feel like the interview was mismanaged. I really do. I feel like this is a good opportunity for Shannon Sharpe to think about how he wishes to steer discussions when a person doesn't care much about his platform as much as they care about sharing things to clear the air. And this is my honest feeling with regard to Amanda. I really want her to heal. I do not believe that using platforms to defend yourself is the same as healing. I do not believe that being able to name the person that hurt you is the same thing as healing. I do not believe that any healing comes from opening up old wounds as a means to get back at people or to unveil this side of people that other people might. I don't think that that's healing. I think that further outcasts you, because now what's going to happen is you're going to go back and tell people that your position on this show somehow hindered the way that you're viewed in the industry. And it does. Here's the reality. There are so many people in the world who have used their platforms to unveil, to harass people, to share what people did to them. And really what we need are platforms where people are being positive, where people are talking about how far they have come. So much of Amanda's life and her experience would have positioned her to attach that video like, I've had all of these difficult things happen to me in life. I've had some controversial interactions with people in the industry, but I survived all of that. And I don't even have to name the names of the people who harmed me or who didn't protect me, but I can say that although those people didn't do what I wanted them to do to cover me, I'm still sitting on this weird looking chair talking to Shannon Sharpe about my life. That's a platform that I can't waste. And she did say some powerful things that were valuable. I believe that her life sets her up to be a really positive example to young women and young men alike. The challenge is now we got to navigate Issa's role in the way that you're respected and viewed. And that's not fair to you or Issa. Now, let me be clear. I'm Club Issa all the way. When I was listening to that, I was trying to put myself in both of their positions. But there was too many alternative positions that I had, too many places that I had to put myself. Like, I'm trying to be Issa and I'm trying to be Amanda. I'm trying to be Sirius Radio and I'm trying to be Shannon Sharpe. And it's so many. There's a common denominator that is so overwhelmingly clear that I stopped trying to show empathy, because at the end of the day, you got to cover yourself. You got to make clear a path for yourself. And I feel like she was digging a hole for herself. I think she can get out of that hole because she is amazingly talented. She's gifted. She has a beautiful podcast. She's intellectually capable. She's physically beautiful. She is a great actress. She can do a little singing. Like, she's a great writer. She's a staple in the Black community. Those things are important. But if she's going to be writing these, look what they did to me, things into her future, you're positioning us to have to choose whether to go with you or the people that you're naming fail to protect you. I'm going with Issa. I don't know about some of the other. Now, systems have hurt me. People have not protected me. I have definitely been misunderstood by systems. My privilege, however, is that I survived all of that, And I have to be careful not to recreate that for other people. Let's talk about that. So people who are defending and covering and or protecting and or understanding Amanda, that's their right to do that. But I think it's also important in the face of other young people to hold people accountable for how they show up. Because no matter what anybody else does to you, how you show up is 1000% your choice. Yes, it's hard to show up in a certain way when people have not respected or honored you or whatever. I get that. But the more you mature, the more you have the ability, the capability to show up and be somebody different. You don't just have to be on one of the biggest platforms of the day, projecting yourself as a victim to all these people when you have all these wonderful things in your life going for you. Now, sure, sometimes our defeats, our difficulties can be stepping stones to things that are bigger. Let's talk about the things that are bigger now that we've talked about the things that seem to be hindering us. And I guess that's just my point. I will still listen to small doses. I'm not going to delete Amanda Seales, but I'd love for her to talk about something else. I love her to talk about something more uplifting, something positive. I'd love to just get a note when she's posting something that is purely encouraging, and it can be reflective, but it doesn't have to be how she's shown up. I hope she can take a break. I hope she can go up on the balcony and look down, look back at these experiences that she's had, these people that she's pulled out from under this dark mat of her past, and say, you know what? Now let's heal. Now let's move on. Not for their sake, but for your own, so that your reputation, the future of your career, like, doesn't have to be subject to everybody except you. I think that's fair. My prayer for her is peace.
Season whistle, whistle. Season whistle, whistle.